All right, what's going on, guys? It's Storytime's of Crimes here, Dreyer. Never thought I'd actually say this again. I did wind up thinking back, though, and I do have a 4-in-1 story time for you guys today. I'm going to, for the probably last time, be doing a classic Shane Dreyer 2021, 2022 into early 2023 style. I'm going to have that same RH No ending, which is on my old phone, but I can just re-download an old video and just cut it out. And obviously this one's going to have better audio as well. So, when you are seeing this, you are going to be seeing me absolutely destroy the town or city of Saint Denis in Red Dead Redemption 2. I finished that game. I finished a ton of games. If you look back at my channel, I did a video game progress finale because I'm working. I actually just got done door dashing, and it's one thing I'm allowed to say because you can't get fired from DoorDash. No one can call and fire me because it's on the app job, and I don't have a boss. My boss is a fucking computer. So yeah, Linda can't fire me, and I'll be getting money from her, and I'm getting my taxes back and all this good stuff. So fuck you. I'm going to hustle and literally shut. When I said before I shut everyone out, I was not entirely truthful. I didn't shut everyone out. Everyone besides my girlfriend and the lawyers going after Linda and my job, besides those people, everyone is getting shut out. I do not care. I will make money, and I'm going to make myself extremely rich. And I would say watch, but you don't have to watch because I'm not going to show it until the day I retire. The day I retire, I'm going to show off everything I have, everything I accomplished, and I'm going to make a statement of how much money I made. And I hope to be a times 2 millionaire, so have $2 million by the time I retire. And that does not include the stuff that's going to my children from another location. So we're good. Anyways, let's get into this 4-in-1 story time. So 3 out of these 4 stories are going to be involving the times that I had my old SUV, the Nissan Pathfinder, and I'll be saying anything about my personal life really, except much as I already have said, but that stuff is not really revealing that much. It just doesn't matter anyways what can be done about it. Only thing I will not reveal ever is my employer. I will just keep a small life and keep it cordial. Anyways, 3 out of these 4 stories involve my SUV, my old SUV, my '02 Nissan Pathfinder, the silver one. You probably have seen it somewhere, especially if some people, I don't know who exactly, because YouTube doesn't let you know, but I don't know who exactly subscribed to my YouTube channel, but I'm going to assume that at least half of my subscribers still are old friends of mine, or if not, still current friends of mine. And have been in this car I'm describing. But this first story is the one that doesn't involve my SUV. This first story, I told a ton of stories on my YouTube channel. You can look for them about me getting expelled. Actually, a lot of these are, I tend to do the same things over and over again, but multiple things, you know what I'm trying to say? And a lot of that's going to play in here, into this entire story time, basically finale, unless anything big happens again. When I was in elementary school, and like I said, they're all over. I've done so many bad things throughout my life, but again, this is all hearsay, but whatever. I've done horrible things in my life, and not been caught with almost all of them. And the ones I've been caught with have been misdemeanors. I've gotten extremely lucky, which is why I behave myself now. I'm going down as a legend and an outlaw. But this one is another one of those bad things I did in elementary school type things. So when my mom was struggling with her health, I've always helped my mom and took care of her. Unlike Linda, who she claims the opposite. Linda claims she took care of my mom and I did nothing for her. It's the other way around. Promise you that. And my mom's death anniversary is coming up here very shortly, February 5th, and I am distraught. But my mother, just like, for example, a lot of bands like Metallica and, Pantera eventually after they lost, but regardless, just because someone in your life dies, you can be extremely sad and lost, but you do not give up hope and you do not give up trying to continue to better my life. And I have so many things going for me now. I can't wait for Linda or anyone to try and claim I'm incompetent because it's not going to work. Anyways. And I've been clean and sober now for quite a while. But back in elementary school, my mom had a stroke, and as a result, she was in the hospital, and I had to be put, because she was a single mom, into foster care until she got out of the hospital. I was in and out of foster homes for quite a long time, about a year. which back then was a long time for me, and still technically it's 1/23 of my life. So at this time, I moved from West Seneca West Elementary School, the Wildcats, to West Seneca East Elementary School, because West Seneca and all those surrounding areas are very big. So while I was at West Seneca East, I was there for about 6 months. It was my longest tenure in foster care. I went through about 6 foster care homes because I was a handful. However, and I'll add a tidbit at the end of this. It's a paranormal story, but it involved another foster home. But when at this time they had taught a lot of the students about what the fire alarm does, and they taught you that if you pull it, it sends the fire department, and it's for an emergency. Now, I'm obviously very smart. I was only like 8 or 9 years old at this time, but I still decided to do it, and I knew what it did, and I had remembered it. I've always been very good at remembering things and not forgetting things, and being very persistent and wise. I'm extremely intelligent. But I knew what it did, and I remember one day, and it was the field trip was coming up. There was a big field trip because it was the time I was going to transition to the next grade. It was the end of the year, and they were going to do a huge field trip for my grade specifically. I believe I was in 4th or 3rd grade, maybe even 2nd. I was young. And I pulled the fire alarm out of nowhere. Just one time I asked to get up to be excused for class, and I pulled the fire alarm. And everyone had to evacuate school. And because it was not signaled by the school, the fire department did show up. And they left. The teacher comes on to the announcements after everyone comes back to class and says, "We know somebody pulled the fire alarm. We know it was one of the students. When we find the student," they didn't say if, they said when we find out who did this, they will not be going on the field trip, and they will be in huge trouble. And I was still a kid back then, so like, obviously, if I was like the same age now back then, and I was in the same scenario, if that was even possible, like let's say I was in the same exact spot at the same exact time, but my same age, I wouldn't give a fuck. But back then, it was traumatizing for me. I was horrified that they were trying to find the person. I didn't even think that through. Now I would. But about 3-4 days goes by, and I don't get called down because I'm a kid, but also the principal comes to the class I'm currently in and brings me down to the office, and even as a kid, I knew what was about to happen to me. They said, "You are banned from the field trip. You are going to be monitored by a school aide." And that is what happened. They had me for the remainder of the year. It was only about a month left of school. I was monitored by a school aide, and they also had this big activity going on outdoors a couple days after I got caught, and they banned me from it. They made me sit on the side by myself because of what I did, which is understandable. I pulled the fire alarm, but not long after this, the year ended. I made it through that. And by the way, they did catch me with the cameras, obviously. But a year went by, and I made it through that. And about a month after school was finished, I, for lack of better words, was more or less kicked out or just given up on by my first foster family. And sorry, I've been distracted. There's a guy walking by me. I wasn't sure what he was doing. He was carrying a shovel and a trash bag, but it looked like a body bag first. He looked like he was carrying a body. So it distracted me a little bit. But this next little thing, it's still going to be a 4-in-1, but this is a little tip. In this next foster home I end up going to, there's a mother, a father, an way older son, like a 17-year-old, and I was 8, and then they had a younger daughter, which was 6 years old. The younger daughter, I would sleep in the room with her. We shared rooms, and then obviously the mom and dad and the son had their own separate rooms. So there's 3 rooms in the bedrooms in the house. And there was a basement lounge as well. It was pretty cool, but I ended up getting kicked out of this foster home for something I didn't do, and you're about to hear. So, and this is paranormal, by the way. I'm convinced it was a mimic or a crawler or a Dover demon or whatever you call him, a shapeshifter. It was strange for sure. Now I'm convinced, but back then I didn't think anything of it. I couldn't understand why. Now I look back and I get chills. So the little girl would always tell me that she had imaginary friends and she could see them and they were all around us, and she would always be talking about it like it was persistent. And it was. Because when everyone left for the day, and I was a kid at this time, I was in like 3rd grade, but they trusted me. I was left as the last person to leave the house because my school, I was in elementary school. The son had his high school earlier. The younger daughter had her elementary school a little bit earlier than me, and the mom and dad obviously worked, so they left pretty early in the morning. So it was just me left by myself to get on the bus. I was trusted, so I was the last one to leave the house. Is my point. Well, I was also at the same time not the first person to return. The dad got home before I did, and so every single time I came home, and they blamed me for it because I was the last person to leave the house. If I could cross my heart and you could see it, I would, but I can't because it's an audio recording. But I crossed my heart, hope I die. I never did this. Their black cat was locked in the cupboard every single day when they got home, before I did. And I was the last one to leave. And they kept blaming me for it, understandably so, because I was the last one to leave. And it got to a point eventually where I even started checking the lock before I left and like was looking at this cupboard because the cupboards had locks on them because we were kids. And they were like the ones that were under the sink. It was locked like underneath the sink in the same spot every day. And I would make sure the cat wasn't in there and it wasn't crawling in there. And it was like one of them locks where the cat couldn't, cats don't have hands. If the door was able to be closed lightly, the cat could have pulled it in. But first of all, it was one of them ones where you had to push the door in to get it to shut. And second of all, how would a cat have known to turn the lever and lock itself in every time? And the lever was on the outside too. That's weird, right? This happened for like a month straight. To the point where they were convinced I was doing it, even though I was swearing up and down as a kid I wasn't doing it. And they thought I was some like evil, devious child. And they gave me up. Which is terrible. But my mom ended up coming back from the hospital. And it was good all the way up until this last year when she fucking passed away because of fucking Linda Kite. But that's a whole other thing. I'm dealing with that. I got the best lawyers in this entire city hired. Italian lawyers. So she can eat a dauber because she's going to jail and having to pay restitution straight to my bank account. I have a whole thing going here. It's incredible. And I now have employment too. So, second story out of 4. Let me get some Altoids here and some mints. So, second story. I've gotten pulled over and towed before, and there's a Storytime video of that on my YouTube channel. It's happened twice. This is the first time that I was pulled over, not as the driver. Every time I've gotten pulled over, except for this last time, which I wasn't even high or drunk, and they claimed it on me. I'm so fortunate that they can't prosecute me even now because they took my saliva. It's going to come out in the court that I was clean while driving. But the rest of this is going to involve inebriated driving. So, I used to hang out with horrible people, like dangerous, devious people. A lot of them were white, but like very troubled. And a few of them were African American and gang affiliated. The African American buddies, we used to buy weed off them because back in this day, this particular event took place in 2019. Actually, all of them except for one take place in 2019. So the next 2 out of 3 take place in 2019, and then one of them takes place over the summer of 2020. Before I flipped the car in November of 2020. Anyways, we would always, because weed wasn't legal at this time, go to this one weed dealer in the middle of Rochester, New York, in the city. Now, Rochester is not currently, but at one point a year or 2 ago, was the murder capital of the entire United States. So many people got shot and killed in Rochester, it's not even funny. And that's just the shootings. Just imagine the beatings and the drug deals and shit. And the scary nature of the place. It was bad. I'll tell you a bit to the end of this story, too. In the same city this happened, this next part. So, my buddy, because back then, I don't do this now. I never would do it again, and I haven't in years. But back then, because I am a very nice man, and at this time was a kid, very nice dude in general, would let people drive my car if they asked to. So I drove us out to Rochester. We picked up the pot, started smoking bong hits in the car. And I pull over because I'm getting tired and I'm getting too stoned to even drive. So I let my other buddy drive the car. Well, he goes to take us on the thruway. And for some weird fucking reason, I swear to God, up and down. For some weird fucking reason, the police were doing what do they call that? A stop and check. Like they were stopping cars getting on the throughways and checking them. We stopped our car and we had to stop, or they would have chased us. And they would have known my license plate. And I told him to stop, even though he's a gangster or whatever. He's white, but all the rest of us in the car were white, but they think they're gangsters, whatever. But I don't even think I'm a gangster. I'm insane, but I'm not a gangster. Anyways, we roll the windows down. Sure enough, a cloud of smoke comes bellowing out, and the cop said, "You stay right here, pull over to the side," and then so that I'd get out the way because they had like 3 police cars pull over on the side of this particular road at the entrance to the thruway. And they were still wanting to screen the other cars and keep letting them go through, so they weren't like literally holding them, blocking traffic. So they had us pull over to the side. My buddy's sitting there. My buddy somehow, and this was like 5, almost 6 years ago now, somehow talks to the cop, and this is one of those cops where like he had a gun and a taser, but he had like one of those reflective vests on. It wasn't like one of the cops because the cops with the black dress shirts are the nastiest. This cop, my buddy convinced this cop that he wasn't stoned, but the rest of us were, even though all 4 of us were high. And there's 4 people in the car, including myself, by the way. He convinced the cop that he wasn't high, and he was a good liar. And I am too, but that's besides the point. Cop comes back, gives him his license. And we're actually allowed, while my buddy, this is the only time this has ever happened with someone else driving my car, or even with me, truthfully, because my DWI was falsified, that they let us go. They let us drive away. That I couldn't believe. What was the tidbit I was going to add to this story? Hold on, I'm going to pause it and resume it. I remember now. So, back when I received that security check, back in October of 2020, as I mentioned that in the acid stories in the very beginning of my channel. Towards the very end, probably like not even a couple days before I flipped my car over, me and my buddies, it was me, a girl, a guy, and a guy. And the girl was dating one of the dudes, so we were all just getting fucked up at this point. This is when I had just come off of all that money. I was almost out of it, but still had enough to keep going. Keep my car driving and keep people around me. And that's why I spent it, because I just wanted company. I was so lonely. We would drive around, and I would do this sometimes, but the other guys would take advantage of it. So obviously during this time, it was still COVID-19 was still fresh in everyone's minds. And at nighttime, even in the city of Rochester, there was no one out. Not police. Well, there were some police, but not as many as there would have been, and no cars. So what we did was ballsy, yes, but was it as ballsy as it could have been to the point where we could have actually died? Not really. But it still is not safe because there still were some people on the road. What me and my friends were doing in this same city, Rochester, New York, were taking advantage of the COVID-19 lockdowns, and we were blowing red lights. We were driving around the city of Rochester for hours on end, blowing red lights, just straight up blowing them, not even stopping, just blowing red lights, because we picked up on it a day prior. We did this for like 3 days afterwards. We had picked up on the fact that at nighttime there was no one in the city. It was like bone dry. So we were blowing red lights in the middle of Rochester. I will tell you something. If people want to claim they're all tripped out and liminal spacey and whatever, they can claim that all they want. But I will tell you something. This was legit real life, like trippy, fucking scary. No one's out here. We're able to blow red lights and not get pulled over type shit. 2020 was the darkest year in human history in a long time. But it's getting better now, thank God. But that's that. This next story is about the time that I actually did technically commit a hit and run and was never caught. It wasn't a hit and run, but it was a hit and run. You'll see what I mean in a second. Because significant damage wasn't caused, but it still caused damage. So, my one buddy, he went by the letter E. His first name started with the letter E, so I shouldn't say he went by. I'm dubbing him E. So E is in a lot of other stories. He lived in Leroy for a while, doesn't anymore. This one was also back in 2019, and the other one's going to be back in 2018. This last story after this one. But E and I decided to, what I used to do, which I think I mentioned it, was I literally, so like my aunt's bedroom at the time had a huge ceiling. She used to sleep in this giant add-on to her house. She lived in a fucking mansion. But she had this add-on room that was gigantic. Well, behind the add-on room, because there was a wood-burning stove in the add-on room, was a storage place for the wood. And so basically, if you could picture this, the door to the storage place, you walk into the storage place from inside the house, and directly to the left was the entrance to my grandparents' house, and then directly to your right was the door to the outside of like the exposed openness. And my aunt would always leave the door from her room into the wood place wide open. But in my grandparents' house was a cellar, and they used to leave the center door open because we would lock the outside door. My aunt would lock it before we went to bed because she'd have us stock the wood every night. You see where I'm going with this? So what I would literally do is I would earlier in the day, whenever I was this deceptive. Earlier in the day, when I was looking for something, or she had me go look for something, I would sneak off, or I would just wait in general for a time where no one was around the vicinity, and I would go out into the woodshed and slip a piece of paper in between and close the door, so the door was shut, but like it wasn't latched. So she would just come up to the door, flick the lock down, and it was actually still technically open. This is how fucked up of a person I was, and kind of still am. But I'm working with it, and I'm fine now. So my grandparents. So basically, if you can picture it, to get to the only door that was open at my grandparents' house, because they thought everything was locked. If you get where I'm saying. To get to this door, I had to first open this creaky ass door and let the wilderness make noise, and then close it and let it clink. And I had to do all this. It took like a half hour to do this. So you're gonna find this funny though. And then I had to walk up onto a wooden like base, because it was like a wooden base stretching out of the house to let us down. And then there's a staircase down into where the wood was piled. So it was all wood, except for the entrance. And my aunt, and I think she did it on purpose, but I'm not sure. Maybe it would get hot in a room. That's right. She would leave the door to the wood storage area wide open. So basically, at one point, I would be standing right in front of my grandparents' door, because the house was connected. My aunt's house and my grandparents' house was connected. This is how like crazy they were. Like they somehow found this giant fucking house. It was huge. And in front of me was the door, and directly to the left of me, my aunt, if she had sat up or heard anything, she would see me pathetically crouched down, trying to open the door. Now, this door, opening the door and exposing the elements was easy, because it was the first sound, and she probably wouldn't have woken to the first sound. So I was able to not rip it open, but just like get it open slightly, and then pull it open where I knew it wouldn't make noise. And it did make noise when this door opened. And then I would close it, and it would just make a clink. And then I'd wait like five minutes just to make sure she didn't wake up, because my aunt was a light sleeper. And I would climb up. I would literally crawl like a skinwalker up the 2 steps of wood and onto the wood platform, and crouch down again right in front of my grandparents' door that they left open, and because they thought everything was locked, as I said a million times. I would literally have to turn the knob. I'd have to turn the knob and hold it there for a minute or two, as much as I could bear, just to be able to make sure she didn't hear that. Now, my grandparents' door was extremely creaky. So it took me a half an hour to open this door because each centimeter I moved the door, it was one of those doors where, let's say you open it fast, it would go, but if you open it slow, it would go, So I literally had to nudge this door open just enough for me to slip through it and then nudge it closed. It took like a half hour to open and shut one door. But I got away with this probably about 10, 20 times and got drunk with my friends. Now, my aunt also owned 25 acres of land, and there was a lot of apple trees she had growing on the land. She had owned it for a while. And so, every year, my grandparents would harvest the apples, have them press into cider, and have some of the cider sit and turn into alcohol. And they would actually make their own wine. They would make their own wine, and my grandparents were, especially them, they were rich. They were rich. She wasn't as rich, but they were rich, and they helped her pay the bills. So, in their basement, if you could picture this, basically they have like an opening foyer, and when you walk in this door, I just walked through. That took a half hour to open and close. The only one that was open. To the left was a door out to the driveway. To the right was a door out to the backyard, and then in front of the staircase, there's 4 doors in this little foyer. In front of the staircase is the door into their main house, and it was set up perfectly for me to get away with it. And then to the right was the freezer, obviously. I would creep down the stairs, and again, another tedious process because they were wooden creaky stairs. I would go all the way over to the very back of the basement where they had like I don't know what they're called, but like it's like an X shape and it holds all the wine bottles. They had, I swear to God, they did it for years, and I ruined their stockpile. I ruined all the hard work my grandparents did. I felt so bad, but. Over 10 times, I stole probably 3 bottles because the thing is, they only drank this wine once every 2 years, and it was during Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they would take a bottle each time. So I knew by the time, because at this time I knew I was already getting kicked out of there. I'd lived with them for 5 years, and they were already sick of me. So I knew I was done for anyways, and the damage was irreversible. At this point, my door was off my bedroom, and this was before I even went to college, so it was insane. But I would steal 3 bottles. Now the reason I mentioned this, and then I would come back up the stairs, and then and then instead of going back the creaky way, I would just blatantly open one of the side doors that opened up to the driveway or the backyard, like I had just mentioned. And I would relock it so they wouldn't find it suspicious that the door kept unlocking, and shut the door, and then I was out and I was free, and I had 3 bottles in my hand, and I would just go around the house from the outside to my car, throw the bottles in the car, start the engine, and go get drunk with my friends off of homemade wine. And it worked though. So now we can get in this story. I just want to tell that because that process was fucked. So I bring this, and I want to tell that. I bring this homemade wine to E's house, and E and I and usually E and I hung out with a ton of people, like sometimes 15, 20 people at a time, all at the house. I would go pick them up in droves and drop them off in droves, drunk and high behind the wheel. But for some odd reason, this is the only time I ever did this with E, it was just him and I. I think we were just being selfish and just wanted to have the booze to ourselves. So we popped him back. Him and I downed about a bottle each and left the other one for his mom. She was also just like her son. She didn't give a fuck where it came from as long as she could get drunk. And I was like that at that time too. So we get behind the wheel of my car. We drive around for probably about a half hour. We actually end up going to the high school. We go to the high school, climb up into the bleachers and into the where the guy with the announcer announces the football games, because they have to have it enclosed. It's the only enclosed part of that whole thing besides the changing rooms. And we climb up there, and actually somebody had reported us because earlier, before we climbed up the bleachers, we had gone up to the school, and someone had left one of the side doors to our high school open. We opened the door and went inside. We didn't even get probably I think they had motion sensor cameras in that school, because we didn't even get maybe 10 feet in, and it was actually the back door to one of the band rooms behind the auditorium. It was the band room where they taught music, because it had to be away from the regular classroom so it wouldn't disrupt the teaching. And It was in the very back of the high school, and an alarm went off. So we literally, it was funny because to get into it, we were so creative and so smart, and I was too. Obviously, since you just heard all that, I talked about the stealing the wine process. And I stole probably about 50 out of the 100 of their bottles of homemade wine that they had collected over like 30 years, which is fucking sick. But I think it's funny. And we because the two doors on both sides of this post were locked, we happened to see a ladder on the side of the thing. So we climbed up the ladder, and sure enough, there was a hatch on the top of the roof for some reason. I think it was in case it's like fire hazard or something. I don't know why there was a hatch on top, but there was. I swear to God, my right hand's up. It's all true. All of it, all that's on this channel. It just can't be proven, which is genius. So we literally opened the hatch, dropped down into this thing, and then closed the hatch because there was a string attached to it. It was insane. I don't know why they ever had a hatch on a thing that high up in the air on the roof. But we got in, and literally, I swear to God, because there's no lights in the thing, I swear to God, maybe like a minute after we were just looking through this thing, we were looking for stuff to steal and sell because we were that insane. And we looked around, made sure there's no cameras first, you know the deal, but the drill. But we watched like 3 police cars, one with the lights on, the one in front had lights on, the 2 without didn't. Watch them pulled up to the high school because the thing is, from this booth you could actually see the entire parking lot entrance and the entrance to the high school from the track and football field. So we watched the police go in, and we literally crouched down and just like kept our heads barely poked up, but they couldn't have seen us anyways, unless we were like literally blatantly standing there and shining our phones. So I told them to keep the phones off. About 15 minutes goes by, the police all end up leaving because they find nothing. And we dip out. Now I get back in my car, and we drive back to the apartments right around the corner from E's house, because he had his own house, but right around the corner from his home was apartments. As I pull out the apartments, because at this point we're just driving around drunk randomly, just for the fuck of it, blasting music and just enjoying ourselves, I make a right-hand turn out of the apartment onto a regular civilian street that had cars parked to the right. In the first car on the right, I'm so drunk, I misjudged the distance between my car and their car. I didn't even hit the back of it like I should have. It was this close to the point that I heard my car and this car exchange paint, if I can put it that way. Like my car was scraping against the side of this car. The mirror on my car folds in. Thank God it doesn't break off, because if it broke off, I wouldn't have known how to explain to my aunt how that happened, and I probably would have found out that it was me who scraped that car based on, it was a small town, so word gets around quick. But the mirror on this car comes off, and I'm drunk driving at this point. I just fucked up real bad, and I said, I'm getting away with it. I didn't even care if there was a camera, and there wasn't, because nothing ever happened to this. But I just dipped out, and before I dipped out, I did a 3-point turn, and came over, and I just looked at it. I didn't even take pictures or videos, nothing, because I was terrified. My aunt was going to search my phone. I just looked out, and I could see I had taken the paint, and the paint had came off of my car, but it had been left on my car, if that makes sense, from the other car. So my SUV was such a beast, the Nissan Pathfinder 02 was insane. But I scraped the paint off the side of this car, and pretty visibly too, and broken someone's mirror off. But my car was completely fine. I just had my buddy roll his window down because it was on the passenger side, obviously, because I made it right. And I had him pop my mirror back out, and it was in perfect condition. And when I got home, I literally washed the paint off the side of my car from someone else's car. That's insane. Here, this last story is about the time that I drove around drunk again off of the wine bottles again, and actually had stolen some liquor. I'm not going to say where I stole it from, because I could be fucked for this one if I even mention it. But I got away with it. But I had stolen a bottle of Hennessy, and I had stolen a bottle of vodka, and it was one of the square bottles. I forgot the brand, but it was one of the square bottles of vodka. And on top of this, we had 3. Again, I would steal 3 each time in a pattern, so they wouldn't notice their wine was going missing that easily. Because because right in front of the room was still a sewing room, and my grandpa still did do work down there, and obviously they know now that I stole it, but they never caught me while I was still living there, so I'm good. But anyways, by the time we finished all these bottles, it was me. Actually, this one ginger who, for being a ginger, was pretty scary. He could actually have called himself a gangster, because he was a good man if you were nice to him, but he wouldn't speak much. He was one of those types of dudes, but he was still like if you pissed him off, which obviously I don't piss anybody off, so I'm always fine. I've never been in a fight in my life. Once I don't piss people off, I'm actually kind of funny. But if you piss this guy off, he would fuck you up. He was pretty fucking scary. He was scrawny, but he knew how to fight. And it was a ginger, the same girl from the story about the blowing the red lights and shit. Uh, the same dude, which was her boyfriend, and another dude this time, and me. So there's 5 of us in the car, scrunching this little SUV. Well, it wasn't little, it was big, but like, you know what I'm saying. It was 5 of us. It was still compact as shit. At this point, we had drank so much at E's house, because E's house happened to be the main party spot. You know, because my aunt's was absolutely not an option. At E's house, we had fucking partied, like hardcore partied. And when we left, we decided, fuck it, we're not getting caught tonight, because we had like been paranoid, because we had been doing, at this time, we had done so many bad things in such a small time frame. We were almost convinced that the cops were stalking us. So we said, fuck it, we left out of his house and just took the main road down, turned left, and drove, because obviously people know where the town of Leroy, New York is. You don't have to go very far to reach the countryside. And my aunt even lived in what was developing from the town into the countryside. It was like in between, but it was like still rural and shit. So we drove out in the countryside. I drove most of this route. Now, I have anxiety, right? Anybody who has anxiety and drinks booze, you're going to not experience as much anxiety as you would if you weren't drunk. However, you mix weed, you get crossfaded. It comes right back. It's similar to like heroin and crack. It's like a speedball. It's like a mini speedball, kind of. Especially because I used to smoke a lot of sativas back then. It was like a miniature speedball. So I was able to drive, but I was still swerving. I was trash drunk. Because obviously people didn't drink as much as I did, and I was fucked up. We ended up going to like 5 or 6 different people's houses and kept getting fucked up with all these random people. And there was a lot of booze on us. And it was hard liquor, except for the wine, but that was still fucking strong. That my grandparents knew how to brew. And we as we were driving, and I'm only saying this because the circumstances here are insane. If you dodge as many animals as I dodged, and I'll get into it, and you drank as much as I drank and drove for as long as I drove, 5 hours throughout an entire night when you had school the next day and made all of it work, and still graduated high school, and I did this every night. I was out every night. I would do schoolwork, party, and sleep like 3 hours a night. That's why I'm so fucked now. I can't barely function on 8 hours of sleep. I fucked my body up, but I'm a legend for it. As I was driving, I swear to you, 5 deer, and 2 in a row, raccoons. So 5 deer and 2 raccoons in a row came out in front of my car out of nowhere, driving out of the country. And that's what you get living out there. And when I say that I dodged all of them while being drunk and stoned, I dodged all of them. And because the first 5 animals were all deer. And I dodged all of them. The one I almost missed. Or almost didn't miss it, excuse me. And after the second raccoon, which weird they commented at that time, because after that there was no more animals that jumped out in front of my car. We only had been out for a half hour after that. But my friends, after the second raccoon, which was the 7th animal I had dodged while drinking in stone, they said, "You got a gift." My one buddy looked right at me and said, "You got a gift," and they all agreed. They were like, "This dude can drive." But, look, I'm going to end this at 40 minutes exactly. Because this was so long, I'm still going to massacre Saint Denis in Red Dead Redemption 2 for you guys. And I decided to, I will, it won't be the Chiefs. I fucking hate the Chiefs. I'll call it. I'll do the Buffalo Bills, and we're both teams will be on all Madden in just a simulated game. I'll do the Buffalo Bills, and I will play as Buffalo versus, let me think here for a second. What team do I not usually go against? Bills versus Commanders, which is what I wanted the Super Bowl to be, and it's the opposite of what we got, and we almost had that, too. Was a Bills-Commanders Super Bowl. But, of course, it's got to be rigged, and it's going to be rigged for Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift to get married. It's fucking embarrassing. Everyone wins a trophy, yay! But in reality, the fucking NFL is rigged, and it's fucking annoying. I'm going to end this at 40 minutes. I love you all. It's going to be longer because of the outro. I'm still going to do the same outro I always do. But the story time right here is going to end at 40 minutes. Hope you enjoyed my stories. I don't got much more unless something else happens in my life at this point, but everything's been told. If you listened all the way through, I appreciate you. Like, subscribe. You know the drill. Run it back over and over again. Keep watching my videos. Peace and motherfucking love.